Hey everyone, this is Play With Your Food, a show where I look at video game meals and wish deeply to bring them into reality. Today I'm making Yeto's superb soup from The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Now the core of this dish is a good pumpkin soup, so I'm starting with a butternut pumpkin, or squash in places other than Australia, halving it and removing the seeds with a spoon before placing it face down on a tray and roasting it at about 200 degrees Celsius. Now imperative to any good soup is the base. So we'll start with onion. I personally prefer Spanish or red onion, and we're just going to chop that in half and peel the skin off before mincing by making cuts down the length of the onion towards the root, making sure to leave it intact, and also making sure to put your hands as in front of the camera as is humanly possible. Followed then by 3 perpendicular cuts up the body of the onion before slicing it, leaving you with small, easy to blend pieces. You also want to make sure to cry as much as you can. Oh no. Next up is the garlic, and if you've been cooking for a while, or if you're a very bad editor, you're going to be able just to squeeze that into a fine mince. If however you do want to cut it with a knife, you can lay it flat and give it a quick hit with your palm, which should loosen the meat from the skin, allowing you to peel it pretty easily before treating it the same as the onion. Multiple cuts down the length followed by perpendicular cuts, and slicing it into minced garlic cubes. Now if you take a look around Yeto's home in Snow Peak Ruins, you're going to see a whole mess of root vegetables, namely carrot and potatoes, which we're going to peel and chop into hearty chunks such that a Yeti would be proud of our efforts. Now during this time, it's really important to try to match the size of your carrot and potato chunks to make sure they both get cooked equally. This is going to stop them from being either too crunchy or not present in the soup at all. And feel free to keep the peels, fried in a little oil, they make for excellent snacks. After about 20 to 25 minutes, your pumpkin should be knife tender. When this happens, pull your gourd out of the oven, but don't make the same mistake I did. Make sure to let it cool down before trying to remove the skin. If you don't, you're going to be left with burnt hands and a whole mess on your board. You should be able to peel the skin right off, but if you can't, absolutely feel free to use a spoon to remove the pumpkin flesh in whatever means suits you best. Pour yourself a stiff drink and contemplate every mistake you've ever made in visceral detail before putting a heavy pot on the burner at a low to medium heat. Adding a little vegetable oil and sauteing your garlic and onions for about 3 to 4 minutes or until soft and semi-translucent. Now you don't want these to burn, so you should just hear a soft sizzle. If it's spitting or smoking, then it's much too high. Once your base is soft, add the pumpkin to the mix, along with 2 cups of stock and 1 of water. In the spirit of the dish, I'm using a mix of fish and chicken stock, and I cannot stress how much better homemade stock is to store-bought. A little effort on that front will change the depth of your food in a remarkable fashion. Let it heat through a little before adding it to a blender and pulsing until smooth. Now I only have a small blender, but it's not about the size, it's about how you use it. Add your soup back to the pot and make sure to taste it. I highly recommend adding cracked black pepper, a seasoning that is so fundamental to pumpkin soup that it should be outlawed to ignore it, but avoid adding salt at all costs. That's going to come from our goat's cheese and you don't want to ruin this soup by over-seasoning. At this point you should have a fairly thin broth, making the perfect environment to soften our vegetables. Add your potato and carrots to the mix and let them soften for about 20 minutes. Now we move to our salmon, and no matter where you buy it, it's always a good idea to check for pin bones. These can be removed with tweezers or pliers and are easily found by running your fingers down the length of the steak. If your fish has skin on, now's the time to remove it. Make a small cut at the end of the steak so that you can get a firm grip on the skin and slowly move your knife forward at a downward angle. This can be pretty awkward, so if you mess up, don't worry. The meat will be incorporated into the soup anyway. I of course nailed it first try, leaving me with skin and meat. Salt the skin to draw out some of the moisture and set it aside for later, before slicing your meat into large chunks. This is a pretty flaky fish and you don't want it to disappear. Once your potatoes are knife tender, it's time to get serious about soup and add 1 cup of heavy cream along with about 200 grams of goat's cheese. This is where our salt's going to come from, and it elevates this dish from good to superb. Like the game, like the soup from the game. Once that's incorporated and you're happy with the flavor, add your salmon. This is only going to cook for a few minutes, so you really need your soup to stand on its own before adding this. In the meantime, fry your fish skin on a medium heat and cut it into small strips, which we're going to use as a garnish. Finally, it's time to plate up. Serve your soup however you want it, but personally I recommend crumbled goat's cheese, crispy salmon skin, black pepper, and the requisite drizzle of cream. And be prepared, because this soup will not only warm your body, it will also give you all the wisdom, courage, and power you need, and change your life in inconceivable ways. It's a good soup.